you're taking the time this morning. Before I do anything else, I want to introduce a couple different groups of people. First of all, my fellow board members that are here this morning, if you could either raise your hands or stand up so we can recognize you. Thank you for all the work that you all do. And I think we have a number of former board members here too. If you wouldn't mind raising your hand so we can recognize all the work that you've done in the past to make this organization what it is. I think it's been made clear with the emails and the notifications you've received about this morning's meeting, but this is not only our annual meeting, it's our 30-year anniversary. And that's quite an accomplishment. I know many of you have probably been involved all 30 of those years, so thank you for that and all of your support over the years. Most importantly, though, I would like to introduce our staff who make all of this happen. I'm not going to take the time to name each one of them individually, but they're really the backbone of this organization, and most of them have been around for a number of years, and they deserve a round of applause for all they do on a day-to-day basis. I'm guessing most of you this week received the most recent newsletter. As usual, it's a beautiful publication thanks to our staff and especially Amelia Hansen, who's the one that puts this together every time it comes out. So thank you, Amelia, and thank you to staff for putting this together. It's always very educational. Always does a great job of highlighting the important work we do. But what struck me with this particular issue, because it's also the annual report, is the pages and pages of our membership and our donors and our volunteers that I know none of you do that to get your name in this publication, but we are greatly appreciative of your ongoing support and all you've done. Obviously, none of the work that we do could be done without your support, so thank you so much for that. One of the things we're required through our bylaws every year is to have an annual business meeting, and that I can guarantee you this will be the least important part of this morning's program, but we are required to do it. So I'm officially going to open the 2021 Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy business meeting. And the first item on the agenda, and I think there were some of these on the table when you signed in. You might have gotten an email yesterday with the minutes from last year's annual meeting, which, if you remember, we did via Zoom. And I will have to admit, after spending the last year and a half talking to people through my iPad, it's much nicer to see people in person. But anyhow, we have to approve the minutes from last year's annual meeting. Is there a motion to approve those? So moved. Been moved. Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Any changes? Amendments? It's probably a good thing no one has questions, because I think the person that took these notes is up in the Boundary Waters fishing. Pretty sure he doesn't have cell service, and if he did, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't answer. So.
Right.
So all in favor of approving the minutes from last year's annual meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. The second item on the agenda is our financial report, and to give that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Georgoff, who's our treasurer. Spends a lot of time with Nicole helping keep us organized financially, so I'm going to let him give the report.
I beg to differ. This is the most exciting part. If you pick the handout out, there's some financial information there from our last annual audit, also in the newsletter. So I'll be brief. So I'm going to give you the latest annual report. That was almost a year ago, September 30th, 2020. Can you hear me? Am I okay? I can't hear myself. Yep. Good? Okay. And then we'll give a quick update on the 10 months that ended in July here. It's just a very, very high-level overview. So we had an audit. Flegel and Melnick CPAs did the audit. Their report says in part, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects. The financial position of Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy as of September 30, 2020, and the results of its operations and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That's the highest level of assurance that the CPA can give, so we got that. That report has been reviewed and accepted by the Finance Committee of the Board and the Board as well. And highlights, as of September 30th, almost a year ago now, cash and investments totaled $3,109,000. That was an increase of $407,000 over the previous year. We have no debt. Net assets total $24,029,000 with $24,029,000 of that representing preserves, preserve improvements, and conservation easements. So that's the bulk, obviously, the assets of the Conservancy. The net assets increased $477,000 over the prior period. So you see growth. The financial operation is successful. Activities and changes in net assets for that year. The total revenues are $1,610,000. Expenses were less at $1,523,000. Excuse me. Let me back up. Revenues $1,610,000. Of that, $1,523,000 are grants and contributions. So most of our revenue again is grants and contributions. Thank you all. Total expenses now were $1,133,000, of which of that $469 represent program services. So that's the bulk of the expense side. So that's it for the annual report. So quick update for the 10 months just ended this July. We've had a pandemic. It's been a challenge for all of us, including SWMLC. We did qualify for the federal payroll protection program during the spring and summer of 2020. All the funds that were advanced to us by the U.S. government as a loan to cover payroll costs were forgiven, so we were able to take advantage of that program. And it worked as intended. It allowed this organization to keep all the employees on board and fully employed, so that's the success there. Okay, so 10 months ended July 31st, 2021. The revenue exceeds expenses. We've seen membership increases this year over last year at this point, likely related to the pandemic, which is unusual and a nice surprise. Cash, investments, and total assets also have all increased, so the financial health of the organization is still solid. Are there questions? That concludes the report.
Thank you, Tom. I believe we need to approve that report as well. So is there a motion to approve the financial report that Tom just presented?
So moved.
Been moved. Is there support? Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next on the agenda is the report from Bob Burr, who doesn't need probably any introduction in these parts, Mayor Burr from South Haven. He's going to present the nomination of the Board of Directors for the next fiscal year, so I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Okay, we have three different grouping of candidates. We have a new member who would be appointed for 3 years, and that would be Thom Groves. And so I can make the motion that we appoint Thom Groves for his first 3-year term. I just need a second. Okay, it's been moved and supported. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The second, like city council meetings. The second group of people will be reappointed for their second 3-year term, and that would be Bob Burr, Bruce Grubb, T.J. Wilkinson, and Earl Warner. And so I need someone else to make a motion to approve the 4 of us to our second 3-year term.
So moved.
And I need a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none.
Aye.
And then we have a new category this year because of COVID. We had to amend the bylaws and so forth, so we want to reappoint Thom Coder and Gail Walter for a special 1-year additional term to make up for this last year's loss. So I am making that motion. I need a second. Support. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I believe that concludes the business portion of the meeting, unless anybody else has anything they would need to say or would like to say. Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? It's been moved. Is there support? Support. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that concludes this 2021 business meeting for Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Pete Ter Louw, who's our president and executive director. Pete has not been here all 30 years, although some days it probably feels like it has been that long for him, but he has been here for at least 20 years, or close to 20 years, and he is going to take over from here. Let's give Pete a round of applause. He has guided and led this organization for close to 20 years, and obviously brought us to where we are, so I think we can all be proud of who we are, what we do, and through Pete's leadership. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Pete just returned from the parking lot across the creek. So Pete's like, okay. Thank you all for joining us this morning to celebrate the acquisition of the Porter property by the South Haven Area Rec Association Authority and the Land Conservancy. And I'm going to introduce a couple people to say a few things about kind of the collaborative endeavors that we're all a part of to make Pilgrim Haven that you're on right here a success, as well as across the 18th, the Porter property. And the first person I want to introduce is the chair of the South Haven Area Recreation Authority and the Township Supervisor of South Haven Township, Ross Stein. Ross, would you come up and say a few things?
You really think I need this thing with my big mouth?
Big voice.
Big voice. I'm pleased to announce the South Haven Area Rec Authority and Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy has now created a 75-acre natural preserve with almost 2,000 feet of frontage on Lake Michigan. An amazing accomplishment. Thank you for joining us all this morning to celebrate the acquisition of the Porter Dunes property. As you are aware, this past October, SHARA partnered with the Land Conservancy to purchase the 48-acre property to expand upon Pilgrim Haven area to increase the public access and conserve dunes on Lake Michigan. I especially want to thank Peter and Brian Bossgraf for their efforts to help make this happen. SHARA, created in 2009, is an association of the City of South Haven School District, and South Haven Township. Brian Dissett contacted Ron Harderink with the idea of the Rec Authority and told him we needed about $12,000 to get the documents in place. Ron, being very civic-minded, got the money we needed. SHARA was originally created for sports and recreation, but with our lease and management of Pilgrim Haven, we have grown and evolved. SHARA's leadership in the purchase of Porter property is a natural step in our role, and we are thrilled to undertake that. I would like to recognize and thank the current SHARA board members for their encouragement and involvement in acquiring the Porter Dunes. Maureen Lewandowski, Scott Reinert, Dennis Fitzgibbons, Mark McClendon, and Adam Versaput and former member Dana Getman. And SHARA's administrative support staff from the city manager of Kate Hosier, and previously Brian Dissett. Thank you all for your service and support of this project. In the next several years, SHARA and the Land Conservancy will work together to protect the dunes, develop trails, and create connections between the two natural areas. Pilgrim Haven's bathrooms and parking area will serve Porter so we can keep it as natural as possible. What a wonderful gift to be part of and share with all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Is that better, Jim? Okay. I'd like to introduce Jim Marcoux. Jim is the Executive Director of the South Haven Area Community Foundation, but Jim was also an original member of the committee that we created to begin to look at Pilgrim Haven and what we might do with it if it was gifted to us. Jim?
Thank you, Peter. I guess it was about a week, 10 days ago, someone asked me if I was coming to this event. They called it the culmination of the acquisition of the Porter property. And I said, I'm not sure if it's the culmination. I think it's just another chapter because that is what seems like has taken place over the last 15 years. Peter mentioned myself and Janice. There were others, Dick Brunvin. We actually started back in 2005, 2006, being a committee that was formed in the city to try and figure out how to make South Haven a better place to live, work, and play. Peter mentioned that the Conservancy came along, and I think that was probably in 2009 or 2010. And it just kind of clicked. But whoever would have thought that we would end up not only creating what has been created here by the Conservancy, but for the enjoyment of our counties, our visitors, and everyone else. And then along comes the Porter property. We thought we had some pretty significant trails and beaches, but trust me, you folks are going to find out, those of you that are touring this afternoon, that it goes way beyond what Pilgrim Haven has. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. And it's really a tribute to not only this group in the Conservancy, Ross mentioned the Township, SHARA, but the city, the Township, the state, the Conservancy, and you people, the community. That's what it took to make this happen. So as part of the Community Foundation, we were just pleased as punches to be involved. We also want you to know that we are working with the Conservancy in several different ways. First and foremost, we have an endowment fund at the foundation for it's called Friends of Pilgrim Haven. By the way, we accept donations. Just to make that check payable to the Community Foundation, P.O. Box 507, and put Pilgrim Haven in the note. But significantly, we are working with the Conservancy on marrying the Porter property and the Pilgrim Haven property so that we've got one endowment fund for both properties. So stay tuned. That'll be coming in coming months. And that's really it. I just, really appreciate the opportunity to be involved and to be able to help make South Haven, as I said, a better place to live, work, and play. Peter?
Thank you, Jim. Now I'd like to introduce Scott Reinert. Scott was recently retired as the Executive Director of the South Haven Visitors Bureau. And now you're a South Haven Area Recreation Authority Board Member doing all kinds of great stuff there. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pete. I've really enjoyed getting to know this guy over the last couple of years and working with him. So, as Pete mentioned, I recently retired in May from the role of the Director of the Visitors Bureau. But one of the things that our Bureau recognized probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago was the importance of trails and recreation, not only to our community, but also to our visitors. And so we spent a lot of time with that. And one of the first things that we did is kind of took an inventory of all of the trail assets that we have in our community. And you may not be aware, but there's actually 14 different trails that emanate through South Haven. And up there is a board back if you want to look at it. We created this map, which is kind of cool, so feel free to take one. They're over at the table there. But nice fold-out map that goes into detail on all the trails that exist in our community, the Harbor Walk Trail and stuff. So those are available. I'll tell you, we've handed out probably 10,000 copies of this in the last 2 years, so very, very popular. But as part of that, we decided to enter into a program. Pure Michigan, who you all know promotes travel and visitation in the state of Michigan, they announced a new program in 2019 called the Pure Michigan Trail Town Program. And we decided, based upon all the work that had been done over the years, to apply for that. And I'm thrilled to announce, and you probably saw, that we were one of the first 4 communities in the state of Michigan to be named a Pure Michigan Trail Town. So that was a great start. And part of our commitment as a Visitors Bureau, we made a long-term financial commitment that we would donate time and financial resources to the promotion and development of our trail assets. And so we've done that. So you saw the map. Many of you probably have seen the Trail Town, beautiful Trail Town signs that are downtown on the Harbor Walk. All of our trails have those. We've put about 30 of those up around town, really beautiful laser engraved signs. So those are around the community. So that was a way to get started. I'm thrilled to announce that as we started working on specific projects, that we became more aware of SHARA and all the great work that they have done, and the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. And we really thought for the Visitors Bureau, it was a natural evolution for us to be part of those great organizations. And so earlier this year, the South Haven Area Recreation Authority amended their bylaws to include the Visitors Bureau as a member, and so our trail efforts and recreational efforts are aligned with SHARA and kind of by definition with the Land Conservancy as well. So we've got just a couple of quick highlights of things we're doing that are really exciting. Many of you know about the 14th Avenue property that SHARA owns. We've been talking about that for some time, the development of that. Well, I'm excited to tell you that it's happening. So next Friday, our first disc golf course will open up. All right, we got some players here. So we've been hard at work. We started May 1st, and in about 4 months we accomplished a lot, because I can tell you, for those of you who have driven by there, it was a dense forest. And so we were able to obtain about $50,000 in private contributions, sponsorships, and we also got some in-kind donations of time and effort and materials. A quick shout out, Brian Spencer, probably many of you know him. He literally spent 4 weeks out there with his brush hog, cutting trees, cutting limbs and stuff, which is a great thing. So as we speak, all of the tee boxes, baskets, everything are in place. Early next week, we're going to do a final cleaning of the course, put up all of our benches and sponsor signs and all that kind of stuff, and we will be opening at 3 o'clock on Friday, September 3rd. So you're welcome to come out. We're going to have a little open house from 3 to 5, and then from then on, open free to the public to use and enjoy, open from dawn till dusk every day. And as long as we can keep playing, as long as there's not 3 feet of snow, it'll be open as well. The other exciting part is phase 2 is the 3 recreational fields. There'll be 3 multi-use recreational fields that we have a grant for. We had a wonderful surprise our board did. We've got another $100,000 match from Mark McClendon, many of you know, a great sponsor, and so that will allow us to get this over the finish line. So there's been a lot of work over the years, but next year we also got a $300,000 grant, so next year we will begin construction on the 3 recreational fields on the same property, so that's very exciting. The other thing I wanted to mention is the Visitors Bureau last year, we purchased, 2 years ago I guess now, Bob, right? We purchased property on Phoenix Street, out Phoenix Street at the Black River. And so as we speak, Joelle is around here somewhere with Evan Marsh. Yeah, Joelle helped us with a grant application. And so as we speak, we have a grant application to install about a $350,000 fully kayak or fully handicap accessible kayak launch on the Black River. We have a vendor and an adjacent property owner that will be running a livery service, so we can drop off there, bring it to town, and bring people back out. And so that's going to be very exciting. So we hope to build that next year if our grant application is successful. We're also working on a mountain biking trail in South Haven, so several sites we're scoping out for that. Clark Carmichael and his group, we got a fan, they're working on the Blue Star Trail. So many of you may have heard they started north and are coming south, but they've decided now to also extend their efforts in South Haven going north. And so we've had several meetings recently. SHARA issued a letter of support for that, so we'll be executing that. But two final projects that I'm really excited about that really ties to everything while we're here today. First, I would really love to see a connector between the Van Buren Trail and these great assets here. Right now, if you're biking, you need to come down 77th Street. It would be great if we could bring people down to this beautiful area via the Van Buren Trail. So we're looking at maybe trying to get a connector straight across to the Van Buren Trail. And then finally, really, really exciting, Pete and his team have been working on a concept of having a walking dune trail that would extend all the way from Pilgrim Haven all the way down to the Van Buren State Park, which would be an unbelievable asset for our community. And we, the Visitors Bureau, SHARA, we're very, very excited about that potential. So we're in the early stages with the National Park Service of talking about ideas for that, but that would be an unbelievable asset for South Haven as well. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about recreational projects and trails. I am under contract still with the Visitors Bureau, and this is what I'll be doing for the foreseeable future, is trying to build and develop these assets that are great for our area. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Now I'd like to introduce Stewardship Director of the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy, Mitch Lettow, to talk specifically about the Porter property. The lead-in, the property is owned by the Recreation Authority. We just have a kind of a management relationship that complements our ownership and leasing to the Recreation Authority of Pilgrim Haven. So I wanted to share with you all the other things going on, whether it's trails or other projects in this region. There's a broader network of what's going on, of which this is a part. But this is our passion. This is our love. Mitch.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks everybody for all of the speeches and all the exciting work going on before this. So, if those of you who don't know me, as a stewardship director, I help manage with my coworkers these preserves and anything that goes along with it, from trails to ecological inventories to working with volunteers. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about Porter, the ecology, as one of the several bona fide nature nerds at the Land Conservancy, which we have t-shirts if you consider yourself one to. That's what I get into. That's what I'm really excited about. So we are really trying to understand this property and make the best decisions for it. And so can I see a show of hands? Has anyone walked the property before? Okay, so you have a pretty good number. If you haven't yet, you'll have a chance to here in a little bit. And if you don't make it today, there's lots of photos and visuals, and there'll be more to come as far as communicating what's out there. I've been there quite a few times at this point to try to help the work along and understand what we've got. And it never ceases to amaze me. I remember the first time I went out there, it was February, so there were no leaves on the trees. And there's a 100-foot back dune that comes out of nowhere. And as you're approaching it, you don't really notice. As you look over, you wouldn't think something like that is over there in such a small area. But it's absolutely incredible to see. The Dickman Creek coming from Van Buren State Park runs through it, a beautiful stream with no impediments or anything like that, freely meandering. Just fantastic. And every time I go, it never ceases to amaze me. I look up and it's like, we did this, you know. So that's really incredible. We're also working with the Michigan Natural Features Inventory, which is the agency that works with the state of Michigan DNR and others to understand rare and endangered species and exemplary natural communities in Michigan. And they're conducting a botanical and ecological inventory right now. They found around 200 plant species there, and in their system, they have sort of a grade for how well habitats fit the classic version or the textbook version of that particular habitat. So in this case, it's a beech maple forest of sort of back dune flavor, if you will. And at this point, they're saying it's exemplary. They're seeing plants there they don't see in other places. And so there's a giant stand of pawpaws out there, everything to love. And so we're continuing to find more out about that, and that's a really important piece for the trail planning because we want to be sensitive to the ecology and the conservation of the site, which of course is one of our primary motivations for protecting it in the first place. So that's why it's kind of inching along. Next year you'll really probably see some changes happening. And it's not just the plants though. This spring, Dave Brown, Stewardship Specialist, and Ashley Colwick from the Michigan Natural Features Inventory. Some of you may have followed the Birdathon or contributed to that effort. And this was one of our sites. We had one day, hit all the nature preserves we could in Southwest Michigan to count as many bird species as possible. And it was kind of late morning, it was getting a little warm. Really weren't seeing as many birds as we thought, and just as we were kind of cresting the top of the dune, we saw black and white warbler, and then we saw black-throated blue warbler, and then we saw magnolia warbler. In the position that you're pointed at in the dunes, you're looking into the canopy of the other trees down below. So these birds that normally you have to do this, and we actually did just lay on our backs and just look up and relax for a little bit. But you're looking into the canopy where normally you have to crane your neck. So gives you a really amazing perspective of what's out there. So encourage you to go check it out and follow any of our updates. The other thing that some folks have talked about, as a standalone property, it would be incredible and 100% worth protecting in and of itself, but it's in really good company. Obviously, Pilgrim Haven here borders it to the north, and there's a stretch of over 2 miles of intact Lake Michigan dune complex shoreline that stretches to Van Buren State Park and beyond. And so for those migratory birds that I mentioned, that's part of their story, coming all the way from Central America and South America, stopping at one of our nature preserves to sort of get them the next leg. That's why things like this are so important, and the scale that we're working on is so important. And so Scott and Pete have mentioned this as well, but I think that a few years ago, we would have looked at something like that and said, I don't know if something like that's possible with the price tag and the scale and the challenges and everything. But here we are. I think 15 years prior to now, we might have looked at something like Pilgrim Haven where we are today and said, wouldn't that be incredible? And so now that we're here, it's sort of like, well, how big can this vision be? And so the next component that we'll really get into in earnest this fall and next spring is working with the National Park Service. So they have a community program called the Rivers Conservation and Trails Association. You can look it up. So they do community trail and conservation planning work. And we started with initial conversations with them. There's a formal application process, of course, like everything. But as we started talking with them and describing what we were thinking about and what might happen out here, they said, I think we can just start working on this now, and we'll worry about the application later. So that gives you a sense of how excited they are about it, which is, no higher form of flattery in terms of conservation and ecology. So we're going to gather our neighbors and our conservation partners and talk about challenges and opportunities, what people are excited about, what will need to happen. These places are connected ecologically, and so this idea that Scott introduced, that they might be connected by a foot trail or something like that eventually, that you could really appreciate the whole complex, perhaps to bikes and other trails and things like that. That could be part of the next step too. And that's just, the more we can share it, the better. And so I think that's going to be a really amazing way to do that. So that's all I have for Porter itself, but there are a couple housekeeping items for the hike today. So those of you who would like to go on the hike, Nicole or Cindy, do people have time slots or no? Yes. Okay, so people have time slots. I gather you know what they are. I don't. So as your time comes up, kind of wander over there, we'll have a couple of staff members, and we've got some signs to guide you. But essentially, if you walk over the bridge, you'll walk along the west end of the parking lot, and you'll see 3 rope and posts, kind of like a nautical thing going on. That's where you'll cross the road, and we've got a nice trail pruned up for you. And there are 2 trail options if you'd like to hike today. There's a strenuous, and as someone who likes to hike and run and do all those things, I do mean strenuous. It's a 100-foot dune, so no joke. And the sand moves, and so we've made it as basically as formal as we can at this point. So there's that option. That's about a mile round trip. It's a loop. And then there's an out and back that will also go through the woods at the base of the dune, and you'll have an opportunity to look at the stream that comes from Van Buren Park and meanders through and then enters Pilgrim Haven over here. That's an out and back. That's more like a half mile, or as long as you want to make it, essentially. There's lots of room to spread out with that one. And of course, our beautiful, rich back dunes also have poison ivy. So, like me, it's hot, it's August, you're wearing shorts. So if you're very sensitive to that, be aware. I don't know if you want to rinse your legs off at Pilgrim Haven or Lake Michigan when you're done. Most of us have hand sanitizer at this point, and that actually helps to alleviate some of the poison ivy oils too. So if you're worried about that, maybe just know that. So that's all I have. So Pete, do you have anything else, or?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a couple things I have to say.
All right. Thank you. Have fun.
So I just asked former executive dean, former SWMLC board member, and committee member Janice Varney, has this gone on long enough? And she gave me a. So I have a couple of things I need to say, and I'm going to drop a couple of names. You know, we're standing on Pilgrim Haven. I think that when this was gifted to us back in 2011, it was a $7.5 million piece of real estate. We were always aware of the Porter property that was owned by Scott Royal, and we were looking at it, but the timing was just never right for multiple reasons. And I went on what everybody refers to as the walkabout in the desert in January 2019. And when I came back, former Conservancy board member, owner of Cottage Home, Brian Boscraft, said to me, he goes, I think the time's right to go talk to Scott and see if he's interested in selling it. The price had come down, and we knew the only way we could do this deal was with a Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant, public funding, of which we're not eligible for, the Rec Authority is. So I had called former city manager of South Haven, Brian Dissett, who is basically support staff, administrative staff, to, and it's now Kate Hosier, the Rec Authority, and said, do you think the timing is right? And he said, well, let me talk to Ross. And he came back and he said, yeah. He goes, we would be in to putting a proposal together if we can come up with a reasonable sale price. So in early March, Brian and I trekked out here. No, this was during the, I went to Arizona, so I wasn't here, but it was like negative 20 degrees and the wind was blowing every day. And you all, I'm sure, lived through it. So we came back, and Brian and I met with Scott. And it was early March afternoon, and we had a conversation. And this property that Scott owned kind of got dumped in his lap. It had been in his family since the 1880s. And then it was, the parents had passed away. It came to his girlfriend, wife, and she was, she had been ill, and she passed away. And all of a sudden, Scott, who was from the Bay Area, was living in here in South Haven full time in the winter of winters, and he'd been here for 4 or 5 years, and he was interested in an exit strategy, let's say. So we met with him, and Brian basically did all the talking. I just stood there and looked intelligent, or tried to. And I'm here to talk about the support of this project and donors that do the thanking. That's really what my role is here. And Scott, other than the trust fund grant, was the biggest donor because he was willing to basically make the 25% contribution that allows you to be successful with the trust fund grant, which was more or less $750,000 that he gave up. So there's many donors, incredible support, biggest project we've ever done. Altogether, it's about $3.5 million that was raised or went towards the campaign to protect this border property. Brian is a significant contributor, not only put the deal together, but also worked with us all along to make it happen. We were the second highest rated trust fund grant that year. The property just blows them away, and a big part of it is because of all the infrastructure that already existed here on Pilgrim Haven. There's parking lot and bathroom and all that stuff. So we basically just said, we're going to create a natural area and feed off something you've already invested in. So that was just incredibly attractive. So many donors, and they're all back behind the fireplace. We will, in the next year, put a trailhead together with trails and donor recognition, but for now, it's kind of a traveling donor recognition event. But so many people contributed to this project and make it go. But a big part of what we always talk about is collaboration, and there's no way that this whole project, us being able to own this and share it with you, and us being able to protect the Porter property without the relationship we have with SHARA and many of the other organizations in this community, like the Community Foundation. So I want to thank everyone who participated in this project. I want to thank everybody who's a member of the Conservancy, and I want to specifically recognize Brian Doucette, who's now the County Administrator in Berrien, who is kind of flies under the radar, but had a big impact on everything you see here for the last decade. Thank you, Brian. Brian Boscraft, that's off in the periphery there, in the Lake Blue shirt, who really drove a lot of what this happened. And Ross Stein, the chair of SHARA. I want to say one quick thing. Ross, did you mention Ron Hardring?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 10 seconds. There's a committee that we assembled who'd already been created. Jim Marcoux talked about it. Of people who cared about what was going on in South Haven. We drafted them into this project, Pilgrim Haven, back in 2009, 2010, when we knew we were going to get it. And Ron Hardring, who passed away several years ago, was a real driver behind that. And we had protected this property, but never got to see Porter. And Ron was incredibly supportive of the Conservancy and of me, but basically all endeavors in this community. And he was a great guy. I wish he was still with us so that he could see all this. So I just wanted to drop that name as well. 2 minutes on where we're going. So behind me, there's a board that talks about the Armentrout-Milbacher Preserve. We've been working on that the past couple of years. We basically raised the money to buy the property, but we're still in the fundraising mode. We need to have the resources to steward it, to create public access. This is 140 acres, 3 miles of frontage on the Kalamazoo River, just above the city of Allegan. It's an incredible encore to this project. We keep building. It's kind of where do we do and what do we do and where do we go next. But we love the pressure of being successful. The second project that we're working on right now is, I think it's protecting about 300 acres through buying conservation easements in the headwaters of the North Branch and East Branch of the Paw Paw Rivers, which is basically Matawan, Paw Paw area. It's western Kalamazoo, eastern Van Buren County. It's a long-standing project. This is a new phase. I think there's 5 or 6 properties we're going to be working with. It's just kind of upstream or above our Portman property. That's going to be a big emphasis in the next year. And then the third project that I think warrants our attention that we're heavily involved in is and then of course I can't remember anything unless I write it down. Oh, is our tree planting project we've been working on starting this past spring. It's a Wildlife Conservation Society grant. I think altogether we're going to plant, I never get the number of trees right. I'm going to say 20,000 trees. We're working with 4 other organizations like the Nature Conservancy and Ottawa County Parks. We're working at 5 preserves. I think overall there's 10 properties that we're restoring with southern floodplain species to address climate change. And that's a huge project that the stewardship component of our organization has been working on over the last couple of years, but began planning this year and will work into next year. And it's kind of all about where we're going in the future. And so we got great stuff that you're going to be excited to see in the next year or two. We just get bigger and doing greater things all the time, and I'm glad you're along for the ride. And the last thing I want to do is I want to recognize the Conservancy staff. And I have no memory anymore. So I have to grab a newsletter because I can't remember what people's job titles are, okay? I know who they are. It's a sad comment, but it's true. So we have them here alphabetically, but the first one joined last year, so you probably haven't seen him in person, is Dave Brown, who's a stewardship specialist. Dave, where are you? Raise your hand. You're somewhere in the periphery.
I think he
here.
jumped the crowd to help people.
He went over to the trail, I think.
He's working.
And that's what Dave would do, okay? So you'll never see Dave because he's too busy working. Miko Dargis is with us, been 6 or 7 years now. She's a development specialist. She's up there. Miko, where are you? Raise your hand. You're over here somewhere, probably. There you go. Thank you. Amelia Hansen. Amelia, raise your hand. Amelia does all the communication stuff. Everything you see visually and also verbally that we put out is, we're all involved, but Amelia guides it and does an incredible job. Hillary Hunt and Emily Wilkie were not able to join us this morning. They're both land protection people. I think Emily's title, that's the one I honestly never get right. It's Conservation Projects Manager. And Hillary joined us, I think it's been 2.5 years ago. She's kind of Director of Land Protection to this point. That's our land protection staff. And Justin, where are you, Justin? You are back here. Okay, thank you. So Justin Gish was hired May 1?
3rd.
Yay, 3rd. Way to go. We're very detailed people here. Me, not so much, just so you know. Justin's a new land protection specialist that joined us May 3rd. He's getting up to speed. He's a great addition to the team. Justin, you were working on your PhD at Western. Is that kind of where you were going?
I still am, slowly.
Okay,
but yeah.
okay. So, no shortage of academic achievement in the organization, just so you know. Welcome, Justin. Thank you for being part of the team. And then Cindy Mills, who kind of runs our conservation easement program. Cindy, raise your hand, please. Cindy's been working here part-time for probably better part of a decade, but then was a board member prior to that. So Cindy's commitment to the Conservancy has virtually no peer. And then operations director, kind of number 2 in the organization, Nicole Speedy. Nicole, thank you for everything. And then finally, Megan Martin. Megan, what is your best title? Stewardship Crew Leader. Megan, how long have you been around? Has it been 3 years?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Shows you what I know. Megan, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Megan basically makes everything go outside. And there's a lot of outside stuff we're involved in. And there's 2 other crew people that work with her that do all our stewardship stuff. So I want to recognize Megan. I think I've hit everybody. Did I not mention Mitch?
You didn't mention.
Well, I introduced him, he spoke. So, all right, so Stewardship Director, Mitch Lettow. Mitch, why don't you stand up so people can see you? We just did something the other day and I forgot about you. Where was that Rhoda Kwan?
That's nice to know.
I'd say every time it's like Mitch is the one. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Mitch. So anyway, yeah, I'm a class act. But thank you all for being a part of this, and expect greater things. Yes. It's just always gets better. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I got enough time.
I know you would.
All right. Thanks.